What if I told you that your high-performing team could be destroyed in a matter of weeks by emotional toxicity that they didn't even create? That right now, invisible threats are penetrating your team boundaries and your best people are quietly planning their exit. Here's the brutal reality. You can master your own emotions, become perfect air traffic control for your team, and still watch everything fall apart because you haven't learned to build emotional firewalls against organizational toxicity. Leadership advice to focus on what you can control isn't just incomplete, it's dangerous when toxic emotions are systemically infiltrating your team from sources outside your direct influence. Welcome to the final episode of Leading Through the Storm. We've mastered personal emotional regulation, learned team emotional guidance, and tackled organizational emotional leadership. Today, we are completing your emotional leadership transformation with the most critical skill, protecting your team from toxic influences that you cannot control. Today, I am revealing the emotional firewall strategy, how to shield your team from negative emotional influences coming from outside your direct control while maintaining organizational collaboration and professional relationships. This isn't about isolation or resistance. It's about something far more sophisticated, creating selective permeability that protects your team's emotional environment while preserving essential organizational connections. Let me tell you about a day that I almost lost my entire team to something I didn't even see coming. Picture this, I'm leading a high-performing team through a critical organizational transformation. We've implemented everything from this series: personal holding patterns, team air traffic control, and organizational emotional awareness. Our team culture is thriving. Our results are exceptional. Then, external stakeholders start experiencing their own crisis. Suddenly, every meeting includes panic-driven demands, last-minute emergency requests, and stress-filled criticism of our previously praised work. Within 2 weeks, I watched my most resilient team members start showing signs of emotional exhaustion. Here's what I didn't understand then. Excellence makes you a target for other people's emotional overwhelm. When departments are struggling, they unconsciously direct their anxiety toward teams that appear most capable of solving their problems. We have become the organizational dumping ground for everyone else's unprocessed stress, and I was so focused on being collaborative and responsive that I was accidentally exposing my team to systemic emotional abuse. That's when I realized emotional protection isn't selfish, it's essential leadership. You can't create a thriving team culture if you're constantly allowing external toxicity to penetrate your boundaries. The breakthrough came when I learned how to build what I now call emotional firewalls. Sophisticated boundary systems that filter organizational interactions while preserving productive relationships. Think about a computer network security. A firewall doesn't shut down all internet connection. That would make the computer useless. Instead, it creates intelligent filtering, allowing beneficial data to flow freely while blocking malicious attacks before they can damage the system. Emotional firewalls act exactly the same way. They preserve organizational communication while filtering out emotional toxicity that could contaminate your team's psychological environment. This is the ultimate expression of conquering control, recognizing that you cannot control organizational emotional climate, but you can strategically control what penetrates your team's emotional environment. Here's what most leaders get wrong. They think boundaries mean resistance. Real emotional firewalls are invisible to others, but impenetrable to toxicity. Let me destroy the myth that professional demeanor protects teams from emotional toxicity. Traditional professional boundaries are like screen doors in a hurricane. They look like protection, but they let everything toxic blow through them while blocking genuine connection and collaboration. Most leaders try 3 ineffective approaches when facing external emotional pressure. The first is the absorber. I'll take all the stress so that my team doesn't have to. The result? You become emotionally depleted and unable to lead effectively. The second is the deflector. I'll stay positive and redirect negative energy. The result? Toxicity accumulates in your team environment while you pretend it's not happening. The isolator will just minimize contact with difficult stakeholders. The result? You damage essential relationships and create organizational conflict. Dr. Sigal Barasad's research at Yale demonstrates that emotions spread unconsciously between people and negative emotional states significantly decrease team cooperation and performance. Her studies show that without sophisticated filtering systems, even high-performing teams can be emotionally compromised within days of toxic exposure. 4 types of emotional threats. Threat 1, the crisis broadcaster. These are stakeholders who transmit their own anxiety as urgent demands on your team. Every interaction carries emergency energy regardless of the actual urgency. This looks like impossible deadlines, constantly changing priorities, meetings that feel like emotional ambushes. The firewall response is urgency filtering. Let's distinguish between genuine emergencies and anxiety transmission. Threat 2, the standards terrorist. These people are the people who use perfectionism as an emotional weapon, creating impossible standards while criticizing your team's excellent work as not quite enough. What this looks like is constantly moving goalposts, public criticism of previously praised work, and demands for endless revisions without clear criteria. The firewall response would be quality anchoring, maintaining clear standards regardless of external emotional pressure. Threat 3, the resource vampire. These individuals drain your team's emotional energy through constant requests for support, guidance, or problem solving that never leads to sustainable improvement. What this looks like is repeated crisis calls, dependency on your team's problem solving, emotional labor disguised as collaboration. The firewall response for this is energy boundaries. You want to limit the emotional labor your team provides to external stakeholders. Threat 4, the chaos creator. These are people who create interpersonal drama, unclear communication, and conflicting messages that force your team to navigate their emotional vitality. What this looks like is mixed messages, triangulated community, emotional vitality that your team feels responsible for managing. The firewall response is clarity protocols require clear, direct communication and refuse to manage others' emotional instability. The complete emotional firewall system. Here's exactly how to implement the filter system. Firewall implementation for leadership, team emotional resilience. The F is for fortify your team's core identity. Before you can filter external pressure, your team needs unshakable clarity about their core value and primary purpose. Create what I call identity anchors. This would be your core value statement. This is what we stand for regardless of external pressure. Excellence standards. This is our definition of quality work. Team worth declaration. Our value is intrinsic, not dependent on others' approval. With my team, we established that we deliver exceptional results through connected collaboration. Our worth comes from our integrity and impact, not from others' anxiety or approval. Most teams are emotionally reactive because they've never clearly defined who they are, independent of the external validation or pressure. Identify incoming emotional patterns. Train your team to recognize emotional threats before they penetrate the team dynamics. Teach your team to identify urgency without purpose. This feels urgent, but what's the actual priority? Pressure without clarity. We're feeling pressured, but toward what specific outcome? Criticism without standards. This feels like criticism, but based on what clear criteria? Demands without respect. This request ignores our capacity and our commitments. Start team meetings with: what external emotional pressure are we sensing this week, and how do we want to respond to it? It is so important to acknowledge these things and call them into the room. The L, lockdown communication protocols. Establish clear protocols for how your team engages with external emotional pressure while maintaining professional relationships. Request written follow-up for urgent verbal demands. I want to make sure I understand correctly. Can you send me an email with the details? Clarify decision authority. Who has the authority to approve changes to our agreed upon timeline? Separate emotional urgency from actual urgency. Help me understand what happens if we deliver this on our original timeline. Redirect complaints to solutions. What specific outcome would help resolve this concern? When external stakeholders try to transfer their stress through crisis communication, your team responds with calm professionalism that forces clarity without absorbing anxiety. T, time box external emotional exposure. Just as you wouldn't continuously expose your team to physical toxins, you limit exposure to emotional toxicity. Schedule interaction windows. We'll address external concerns during designated times, not throughout the day. External labor limits. We provide X hours per week of consultation, not unlimited problem solving. Meeting preparation requirements. External stakeholders must provide clear agendas and desired outcomes before scheduling meetings with our team. Recovery time protection. After high stress external interactions, we build in team processing time. Your team's emotional energy is a finite resource. Protecting it is not selfish, it's strategic. E, evaluate and respond strategically. Before responding to external pressure, evaluate the true nature of the request beneath the emotional urgency. Ask, what's the legitimate business need under this emotional pressure? How can we address the actual need without absorbing the emotional chaos? What response serves both the organization and our team's well-being? How do we maintain professional relationships while protecting our boundaries? Use what I call pressure translation. This is where you convert emotional demands into business conversations. When someone says, "This is a crisis," you respond with, "Help me understand the business impact and timeline that you need." R, reinforce positive team culture. After filtering external emotional toxicity, actively reinforce the positive emotional culture that you have created within your team. Culture reinforcement practices look like daily connection points where you have brief check-ins that prioritize your team's emotional well-being. Success celebrations, where you regularly acknowledge the team's achievement, regardless of external recognition. Value alignment conversations. This is where you have discussions about how team actions reflect core values. Stress processing sessions. This is structured time to process the external pressure without absorbing it. After implementing Filter, my team went from reactive stress to proactive resilience. External stakeholders began commenting on our team's calm confidence and clear communication. We maintained all essential relationships while completely eliminating the emotional exhaustion that was draining our best talent. Some of you may be thinking, this sounds a lot like we're not being team players. Emotional firewalls make you better collaborators, not worse. When you're not absorbing everyone else's anxiety, you can actually help them more effectively. When your team is not emotionally depleted, they have more capacity for that genuine collaboration. But what about organizational relationships? Emotional firewalls actually strengthen relationships. You're interacting from genuine capacity rather than reactive overwhelm. People prefer working with teams that are emotionally stable and reliable, not teams that mirror their stress back to them. A real organizational challenge is often when senior leaders expect you to absorb their stress. But here's what I've learned. Senior leaders actually respect teams that can maintain stability under pressure. They depend on you more when you're not emotionally reactive to their stress. Your emotional firewall becomes their emotional anchor. To maintain empathy while protecting boundaries requires balance. Empathy means understanding others' emotional states. Emotional firewalls mean not absorbing those states into your team's emotional environment. You can care about someone's stress without taking it into your nervous system. Here's your final challenge of the Leading Through the Storm series. Implement one filter element with your team this week. Choose your starting point. Fortify your team's core identity and values. Identify and name emotional patterns affecting your team from external sources. Lock down one communication protocol that protects your team's emotional environment. Here's what may shock you. When you stop absorbing organizational emotional chaos, other leaders will start asking you how your team stays so calm and productive. You'll become the leader that others want to learn from. Share in the comment which filter element feels the most urgent for you right now. Over these 4 episodes, we've built a complete emotional leadership system. Over these past 4 weeks, we've built a complete emotional leadership system. Week 1, we discussed personal emotional regulation with the airplane holding pattern. Week 2, we discussed team emotional guidance with air traffic control. Week 3, we discussed organizational emotional awareness with the CLEAR method. And this week, external emotional protection with emotional firewalls. When you master all 4 levels, you become the leader who can maintain excellent results in team well-being, regardless of organizational emotional chaos. You create islands of emotional stability that attract the best talent and produce the strongest results. When you implement the complete emotional leadership system, your team doesn't just survive organizational storms, they thrive during them. While other teams are reactive and exhausted, your team becomes known for calm excellence, strategic thinking, and consistent results. Here's something that might challenge people. Your emotional firewalls don't just protect your team, they force the organization to improve its emotional climate. When toxic behavior can't penetrate your boundaries, it loses its power and its influence. I promise to show you how to lead through any storm while maintaining your team's emotional well-being and performance excellence. Now you have a complete system to do exactly that. Remember, you can't control organizational weather, but what you can control is your team's emotional climate. Your emotional firewall is your greatest leadership tool. This concludes the Leading Through the Storm series. Now you're equipped to lead with emotional intelligence, regardless of external chaos. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and when organizational toxicity tries to penetrate your team, your firewall is up and your team is protected. You don't have to shrink to lead. You just have to show up with impenetrable boundaries and unshakable grace.